Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on D.A.F's third album called Alles Ist Gut. This is the first time on the channel. This was their first album once they were signed to Virgin Records, and this album really put them on the map, and also really it was widely successful in Germany at the time, and it really helped create the EBM genre. Um, it's definitely one of those landmark records that helped start a genre that's still going, and even I think in some respects it's going stronger now than is as much as the early '80s or mid '80s. There's a really interesting scene out there, like with techno producers and people that grew up on EBM and really still interested in the style, and also a lot of industrial fans that have been hardcore industrial fans, sort of learning about EBM over the last 30 years and sort of evolving into balancing the two, because there's a lot that goes hand in hand with the EBM and industrial music and electronic music and new wave and just early electronics in general, and kind of avant-garde electronics or music concrete, or anything that's kind of abstract with electronic music is or unique metal instruments or anything like other bands, and which I can't pronounce the name, Neustabaten or whatever it is. There's certain bands like that. Even Dead Can Dance does some unusual instruments and stuff like that. But there's a lot of bands that kind of cross with EBM, and it's exciting to see them, the style really evolve and be really popular right now with people that are getting more into techno and sort of finding their way into EBM. The genre is particularly exciting to me because I think the difference between EBM music and industrial is there's a little bit of a looseness with EBM. There's a little bit more of a groove. I'd lightly say funk in there, a groove in there, like with EBM music, where industrial can be a little bit more rigid, maybe a little bit more aggressive. EBM is a little bit more tied to the older electronics and maybe a little bit dancey. It can be even cross over into the other styles that I mentioned. Where industrial is for the most part, it's either dancey or it might be electronic. A ballad in there. You can think of like Nine Inch Nails with like a Nine Inch Nails sort of ballad, and it's sort of industrial, right? And it might break out into an industrial part in the song, and you're like, oh, this isn't just electronic music. It's kind of like industrial too. But but EBM is a little bit, I think, has a little bit wider range of and maybe it's not so rigid as industrial. And this album is a really good example of that, and that's why it's kind of harked back to is one of the premier albums of the genre to help in the earliest form to help create it. Robert Gohl is the drummer. Also, Gabriel Delgado Lopez is the singer. I really respect that they didn't, want to sing in English. I think it really lends to the cultural aspect of the album and gives it that kind of respect of the sound, and I think the goal of the sound. And I think it would have been a lot different if it would have been English. There is kind of it kind of lends itself, especially if you don't speak German, to the alien. It sounds very alien and different and unique, and because it's in a different language as well, that just kind of helps it feel so different and unusual. And also how powerful it is, and it goes that goes with his singing and his talking as well. Some of the songs are particularly brutal and almost sleazy sounding as well, because there is a little bit of, like, I wouldn't say it's like disco, but I think that's the other part of EBM is it's kind of there is a lineage there of dance music, and since industrial was coming out of the 70s, late 70s, you could see why a lot of the machines that did disco music and early house music, even all the way up to that, early hip hop, electro, freestyle, also a lot of those people use the same instruments on industrial and EBM. So you can see the range of the wide range of influences here, and it's particularly because of the instruments that were used, and they just use a lot of these same instruments on different styles of music, and so in some ways they're almost kind of tied to each other in a strange way, sound wise. They may not have been interested in disco, or Italo disco or anything like that, but some of these beats can really almost feel like they're Italo disco. Like if you stripped off the vocals and maybe stripped off the strange sound that might be on a song or two and sort of keep it at the rhythm, you might be like, this is kind of like a darker Italo disco, So it's a cool thing. I like how varied the sound is. Generally, every song has a raw, singular sound, an interesting sound, and then a bass line, a beat, and a vocal. And it's just like those particular elements sort of make up the sound, and there really isn't too much outside of that. There might be some, a couple odd sounds, but for the most part, there's odd sounds, beats, bass line, and a vocal. And there's a really cool rawness to the album as well, and it's layered well, even though it is simple, and it's more raw versus being artsy, or I shouldn't even mention artsy. That would be a stretch, but there's really nothing. I wouldn't even say fashionable. Maybe it's unfashionable to be fashionable, but it's so different, and it's trying not to be everything that was probably out then. Probably trying to be unique in itself. There are some parts of certain sounds where they're almost becoming slightly out of tune, which is cool, and it kind of gives it that stark kind of almost military style feel. There's definitely a German march sound in here as well, kind of like an industrial parade or a EBM march. That kind of has that kind of dark German sound. With a very militant speech on it. I could see why some of these bands, depending on how they presented themselves, could almost be at the time feeling like they're supporting Nazis and stuff like that, or some type of military. I'm not saying that this sounds like they're supporting, it sounds like a Nazi march or anything like that, but they sound very militant. And when you think of Germany, and then you think of electronics, you're kind of in that 1981. You're in that period before, the communists are in East Germany, and West Germany, kind of has a little bit more of a free form, and they're able to do music like this and play music like this, and so there is kind of a military kind of march kind of sound to it. It sounds like it's very raw and instructing you to do something, and and then you tie that with the rhythm of everything, and it's almost again like a Italo disco rhythm feel, combining that, where it's just then you don't think it's very, then you know it's not any kind of movement or anything against government or stuff like that, although there could be some lyrics in here that are, but then you kind of get the I don't know if that's the entertainment purposes of it, but just and I wouldn't say the dance purposes of the record, or the aim at that, but it's just electronic rhythms that sort of created a dance music, but I don't think it's intentionally trying to make anybody dance like EBM normally would. So that's kind of where the experimentalism is in it. Even though there's beats and there's sort of a dance to it, it's really not like dance music per se. There's a couple that kind of verge on like possibly being a dance song, but I mean, I'm sure you would bob your head and sort of dance to any of these tracks, but there's a I don't know if the beats really kind of warrant it being a dance record. Just put it that way. Or the songs, I should say, not the beat. The beats do feel like you might be able to dance to it, but it's kind of like there's a. It's interesting. It's almost hard to explain because, yeah, it's just kind of the I think it's the experimental feel in the album that really kind of has you perplexed on trying to pin down the sound or the influence, and because it's just very very unique. And I think sometimes I get caught up in trying to compare something to something else, and even knowing this is groundbreaking, I'm still trying to compare it to something, and it's hard to do that. As far as the individual tracks, I'll bear with me. Well, actually, not bear with me, but excuse me for not mentioning the tracks. I don't want to rip them up by not pronouncing them right. But track number 1, I give it 2.25 stars. Dear Mussolini is the more upbeat one, most popular song from the album. I give it 3 stars. Track number 3, I really like the groove on here, 2.75 stars. Track number 4, I give 2 stars. Track number 5, I give 2.75 stars. The glockenspiel, childlike melody is pretty interesting as well. Track number 6, this one's more of a steady beat pattern. It's a little bit eerie as well. I give it 3 stars. I feel like the album gets better as you go on too. Track number 7, 3 stars. Track number 8, 3.25 stars. Track number 9, it kind of reminds me of Bodywork by Front 242. Is it Bodywork or Work Your Body, or can't remember. Make Your Body Work. Oh no, that's 242. Maybe I'm not sure which one, because there's the body in 242, but there's a body in the vocals on Nitz Rep. I must have meant 242, Make Your Body Work, or I'm confused. Anyways, it sounds like one of the two bands. I'm sure if you knew the song, you would probably say, "Oh, it sounds like 242 more than Nitz Rep." But I'm leaning toward Nitz Rep actually, because if I would compare this D.A.F to anybody, it would probably compare them to Nitz Rep. So I'd probably say them, is what I meant to say. Anyways. And track 10, the title track, is my favorite track. 3.5 stars. The melody and the bass line, the beat working together. This time is like one of the only times I feel like everything is succinct and sort of in rhythm and working together for some of the time, adding a little bit more of a depth. A lot of the other songs, there's definitely some, I wouldn't say really conflicting rhythms and stuff like that, but there's definitely some different sounds that are sort of unique and throw things off. And so there's always a feeling of like rawness in there and experimentalism in there and sort of uniqueness. And the title track is the first time that I felt like it really kind of is more straightforward EBM towards what it would be. I add up all the tracks and it's a 28.5 stars divided by 10, so it's 2.85. So right around 69, 68, and I gave it a few extra points into being a 71 out of 100. I think it's a very good album. I might rate it a little bit lower than other people. I know probably a lot of other people would probably give this, just for being how groundbreaking it is, probably give it in the 80s and make it a genre classic. I think the songs are sort of missing a little bit of catchiness for me. I think there is a good mood on the songs, but I think there could be more moodiness on there and more uniqueness on some of the atmosphere. I think it's kind of missing maybe um, possibilities of a little bit more layering. For a rawness EBM record, and for the time, I think it probably could be in the closer to the 80 score, but I think it needs more atmosphere, a little bit better production. Even though I feel it's ahead of the time, I do feel like it could use more atmosphere and maybe some catchier songs, and maybe some extended songs too. Like there's really only one song over 4 minutes. I like longer songs. You know, if a track is 2 minutes and 41 seconds, there's actually, you know, it looks like, I mean, 7 out of the 10 songs are under 3.5 minutes. So, you know, I like my EBM a little bit longer. I like my tracks to evolve a little bit and get a little bit more into the instrumental and some choruses in there. And, you know, that's kind of a little bit more towards my style. But I do really respect this album, and it's always been a album that you sort of point to and you say, wow, that was done in 1981. Like that, it's almost like on that level of like early Throbbing Gristle and Chris and Cozy for me, and even some Cabaret Voltaire, just and even Skinny Puppy, just way ahead of its time in many ways. But yeah, 71 out of 100 for D.A.F's 1981 Alles Ist Gut. Curious what your thoughts are on this album and what you would rate it out of 100. All right, thanks so much.